Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing projected rookie wide receiver Makai Lemon out of USC, who I think will be an early declare for the 26 NFL draft. We're going to take a look at his profile, usage, advanced stats, progression through college, take a look at some All-22. I'm going to break down his strengths and weaknesses. And then finally, we're going to see where he's projected to be drafted in terms of real-life draft capital, and then what we might be able to project from him in Dynasty. And so watch to the end of this video, and you should have a pretty good idea. And so when we take a look at his height and weight, both PFF and NFL Draft Buzz have him listed at 5'11", 195 pounds. Being 5'11" in and of itself for the wide receiver position would be 23rd percentile, and 195 pounds would be 33rd percentile. But, you know, I just broke down Carnell Tate in the prior video, and he was 6'3", and I believe about 193 pounds, 195 pounds, give or take. And so he's a lot more dense than somebody like Carnell Tate is, who's much taller, yet around the same weight. They're projecting him to be a slot receiver. That would match up with the usage in which we've seen from him at USC. This season, he's played over 70% of his snaps from the slot, so that makes sense. And then they project him to run a 4.48 40-yard dash, which would be 59th percentile among wide receiver prospects. And taking a look at his profile, this is the kind of profile that I would like to bet on from a production standpoint. Now, you'll see huge growth from year to year and positive growth annually. There's no regression here from a counting stats perspective. Now, somebody like Luther Burden, for instance, broke out in a big way as a true freshman, had a ridiculous true sophomore season, and then his counting stats definitely suffered as a true junior. But once again, it was important to contextualize that his quarterback was playing hurt. The quarterback play was abysmal, but he was still a huge integral part of the offense at Mizzou. And so it was something that I didn't really hold against him in the same way that I might in circumstances that might have been different, such as his quarterback play being the same and no other major offensive environmental changes. But getting back to Lemon, as a true freshman, he had 8 targets, 6 receptions, 88 receiving yards, and 0 receiving touchdowns with a 61.3 PFF receiving grade. Not enough of a sample size for it to really mean much, but as a true sophomore, went all the way up to 67 targets, converting 52 of those into receptions, 764 receiving yards, keeping his 14.7 yards per reception the exact same with significantly more volume was pretty impressive to me. And going from 0 to 3 touchdowns, along with the PFF receiving grade jump from 61.3 up to 85.3. But this season has taken it to a whole nother level, going all the way up to 108 targets, 79 receptions, 1,156 receiving yards, keeping the yards per reception at 14.6. So essentially the same with more and more volume. That's impressive to me. And going all the way from 3 to 11 touchdowns and seeing his PFF receiving grade jump from 85.3 all the way up to 91.3. This is the kind of ascending profile with huge growth from year to year that I want to bet on. And once again, you want to bet on early declare profiles that see significant growth from year to year and end on a strong note. And so now we're going to take a look at some box scores here. I promise you we're not just going to be box score watching. We're going to break down some advanced stats and film later. But I want to use this to show you how he's performed against ranked competition. That's something I really value. I don't value as much production against teams that are, disproportionately less talented as a whole than your team is in particular. And playing well against ranked competition is generally a good gauge as to how a prospect might be able to turn up when it matters most for their team, right? So against number 23 ranked Illinois, he went 11 for 151 and 2 touchdowns. The next week against number 15 Michigan, went 9 for 93 and a touchdown. Against number 13 Notre Dame, he did go 4 for 76, along with a rush for negative 13 yards. That's unfortunate. But then he had 2 more games against ranked competition, where against number 21 Iowa went 10 for 153 and 1. And against number 7 Oregon, his production was a little bit limited with 7 for 34, but he did score twice. And so in general, against ranked competition, he has fared extremely well, albeit there are several games here and there where he doesn't make a ton of noise statistically. And so taking a look at his advanced stats here, among FBS wide receivers with 50 or more targets, it was a sample size of over 200 here. Lemon ran 369 routes, which is 92.0% of the team routes. That's very good participation, especially for a slot receiver, although he does play some Z to be fair to him. Taking a look at his percentages here in terms of his deployment, he's played 70.6% of the time in the slot this season and 27.9% out wide. Obviously, being in the slot is in the slot, but being out wide, he's going to be a Z in that instance, not really an X for the most part. This is the profile of a essentially slot-only wide receiver, but that doesn't in and of itself necessarily mean that he is specifically limited to only slot work. And I personally don't think that's going to be the case. I do think he's going to be a good mixture of a slot or a Z for an NFL team. But taking a look at some more advanced stats here, his yards per out run of 3.13 are 8th in the sample size. His PFF receiving grade of 91.3 is 2nd. Now, his yak per reception of 6.4 is tied for 54th. So that's a little bit misleading in the sense of I think he's better than 54th in the country in terms of his yak ability in general. And his missed tackles forced of 20, which are 6, kind of help balance that, in my opinion. I don't think he's the single most dynamic yak receiver in the entire country, but I do think he's very, very good in that regard. But taking a look at his contested catch percentage, if you're going to be a slot receiver, having good hands and being good in contested catch situations, especially when you're unable to collect, any separation, is going to be crucial. And so he's converted 10 out of 15 for a 66.7% contested catch percentage. That is fantastic. Anything over 50% is generally regarded as pretty good with a good sample size like he has. Taking a look at his targets and targets per game, he has 108 on the season, which is 9 per game. That's great territory. He's converted that into 79 receptions at 6.6 per game. Pretty efficient. Give or take 7 out of 9 targets are converted into receptions. He has 1,156 receiving yards at 96.3 per game. That's a little bit more than Carnell Tate's 88 per game. So both are plenty good for us in terms of profiles for true juniors. And he has 11 total touchdowns on the season, which is 0.9 per game. Overall, a lot of these advanced stats tell us that he is performing efficiently and he is a well-rounded player. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, Infamy MTG, AOYOB, The Don, and Any Buckeye. Thank you guys. I'm doing this full time now, and without your support, this would not be possible. If you'd like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in both the comment section and description of this video. You'll receive not only, but including access to a Discord where we have a channel where we have NFL and college football talk, as well as a channel where we have fantasy football talk, and a third channel where we laugh at poor trade offers that we've been offered in fantasy football. But if you'd like to, you can always DM me with private, questions if you don't wish for it to be known by any community members. But you'll also get help with building your fantasy football teams every year. I'll use wins above replacement, as well as just looking at the general lineup and scoring settings to help you with your teams each year. I'll help you with trades that are advantageous based on those factors as well. You'll be part of a fun and growing active community. You'll not only receive access to videos early guaranteed, but you'll also have the ability to ask for personal videos that you and only you can view. Or potentially, if you'd like something to be shown on the channel, you'll have preferential treatment there as well. So please consider becoming a member. I'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video. While some All-22 clips display some of what I'm going to be mentioning here, I'm going to read a brief 3-minute synopsis of Makai Lemon that I've written. So Makai Lemon is a true junior out of USC who best projects to be a slot/Z receiver at the NFL level and possesses a ton of upside for both real-life NFL teams and fantasy players alike next season. His usage this season at USC was that of a primary slot receiver, with a 70.6% slot percentage and a 27.9 boundary percentage where he played at the Z position. Really not going to be your X wide receiver. I think he is best utilized in the slot, but should be used in 2 wide receiver sets pretty quickly as he grows at the NFL level. I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue for him. He's consistently gotten better with regularity year after year at USC. He's listed at 5'11" and 195 pounds, which is reasonably dense for that build and should help him absorb hits and break tackles well at the NFL level. He's not the burstiest receiver off the line, but I do think that his build-up speed is rather underrated and won't stop him from creating chunky plays at the NFL level with regularity. He has incredible hands and consistently makes catches away from his body, even against the grain. Remember that he had 10 out of 15 contested catches made this season, which is a 66.7 completion percentage in contested catch situations, and 50% is a good mark. So yeah, he's very good in contested catch situations. Now, his length is a limitation in that he doesn't have the best catch radius, but if the ball is placed within it, he's coming down with it pretty much every single time. He is a nuanced route runner who adjusts his route depth with ease and has no issues with finding the holes in zone coverage, which is going to be very important for him at the NFL level because he's probably going to be facing majority of the time zone coverage. So it's kind of becoming a prerequisite to be a complete receiver. And I just don't see that being any issue for him. He's a really smart player. He's also, though, a menace after the catch, and he shows us with a good understanding of creating advantageous angles and manipulating them as well. But he also brings the power to break tackles and the agility and spatial awareness to juke people to create additional yards after catch. And yeah, like I said, he is a menace in that situation. He does struggle with press coverage, but I don't think this will inhibit him because I don't think he'll face it with regularity due to likely being a primary slot receiver that probably sees some work at Z and two wide receiver sets. And I think whatever team that drafts him will be happy to have done so, and he'll be an immediate contributor. Overall, he is one of the best wide receiver prospects in this class and deserves to be treated as such. I think this guy is going to be an absolute dog at the next level. Moving on to his projected draft capital, with a brief summarization once again of his strengths and areas to potentially improve. Per NFL Draft Buzz, he's supposed to be a mid-first round draft pick right now, with a good combine showing and good interviews that could potentially rise, with a potential poor combine showing or poor interviews that could, lower a little bit. I have no reason to believe that either one of those things would be the case in terms of negatively affecting him. So take that for what you will. In terms of his strengths, once again, he has vice grip hands. If you were watching the All-22, you saw multiple catches, against the grain, away from his body. He's very sure-handed, which is important for a slot receiver, really any receiver, but especially if you're going to be in the slot. In terms of his yak ability, he's dynamic with the ball in his hands. He's very good in space. He has good spatial awareness. He knows how to manipulate angles, set up defenders for failure. He'll spin out of tackles. He'll break tackles with physicality as well. Very, very good in that regard. He displays route running nuance, especially that's going to be important from the slot because you're going to need to be able to create quick separation. You're going to need to be able to adjust your routes based on the depth of defenders that are all around you in order to get open. And he also plays with the dog mentality. That's something I really value with wide receivers. He's physical. He's not afraid of contact. He breaks tackles and he tries to get more yardage every single time. That is a big plus in my opinion. Now, potential areas to improve. He doesn't really have the instant burst. I'm not sure that that's something that you can necessarily vastly improve, but that could potentially help him out a little bit if he's able to do so. Another thing is he's not as good against physical press man coverage. There's a reason he primarily is a slot, and most of the time in which he's not in the slot, he's a Z. It's to avoid press man coverage. I think a lot of it has to do with just, his frame and his stature in general. It's not really advantageous for him, but there is the chance that he improves in that regard. And then another thing is just his catch radius, which is once again kind of something with his frame. While he does make, catches against the grain and away from his body, he's just not the biggest target, but that is kind of an immutable characteristic that you're not really going to be able to do anything about. So you can't really improve that. Moving on to my pro comparison, I think he's like a little bit less bursty Luther Burden. So Luther Burden, I think, is just quicker off the line of scrimmage, gets up to his top speed a lot quicker than Makai Lemon does. But I still think that Makai Lemon's deep speed is a little bit underrated. I don't think he's definitely not going to be a burner, but I do think that people don't give him enough credit there in particular. But I think that Burden and Lemon both share the special yak ability that I like out of wide receiver prospects coming out of college. They have good spatial awareness. They can manipulate angles with trailing defenders and defenders approaching them from ahead. Very good juke moves, a good spin move as well, but they can also break tackles with physicality, and they're both sure-handed. And I think that they're both good positional fits to be a Z or slot receiver at the NFL level. In terms of where I think the Dynasty community is probably going to have him ranked, I think it's going to be anywhere from wide receiver 13 to wide receiver 22, depending on, the projected target volume, the team fit in general, potential quarterback play. I would personally probably have him ranked in between Chris Olave, who's wide receiver 19 on KTC, and T. Higgins, who's wide receiver 20, with room to grow or regress depending on, the landing spot, the total draft capital, the projected volume, and where I think teams might use him at the NFL level. I really doubt any team is going to try to throw him at X, but, teams can do whatever. In terms of a couple potential fits, I think the Dolphins at 12th overall, I think that they could use a really good slot receiver. I think that he and Tua could be very good over the middle of the field on those timing routes. And I think that Lemon could extend plays with his great yak ability. I think the Steelers at 15th overall could use a really good number 2 receiver to DK Metcalf. And while the quarterback play wouldn't be necessarily ideal, I think that he would get a good bit of target volume. I think the Jets at 23rd overall via the Colts first round pick could be a good bet. To go opposite of Garrett Wilson and then AD Mitchell, I think that could be pretty good if they're able to get a real quarterback to be able to throw the ball in that offense. Maybe not the best for the short term, but I think long term, if that were to happen, that'd be a decent spot for him. I think the Browns 26th overall via Jacksonville's pick could be a realistic spot as well. I think he'd be a good fit in the Stefanski offense. You'd have Jerry Jeudy there and Cedric Tillman definitively playing X. So I think that Lemon could be a really good slot receiver and kind of switch with Jeudy at Z as well. And I don't think that would be the worst landing spot if, just like with the Jets, they are able to lock down a long-term quarterback, but it might not be the best for immediate production in year one. And so let me know below in the comment section, where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Where do you have him ranked personally, among the general consensus top 3? Do you have him potentially lower than that? Let me know below. I'm curious to see what y'all think. I really like this guy. I think he's probably going to be my wide receiver 1 or 2, unless something changes. I see something with the all-22, potentially with some of these upcoming wide receiver prospects that I'm going to delve into. But I think he's pretty safely going to be in my top 3, and I think that he'll probably be number 1 or 2. But team fit is going to be important for him for sure. But yeah, if you would like to, I would really appreciate it if you would become a Patreon member. I'm doing this full time and your support would be greatly appreciated. Thank you to my Patreon members. If you cannot or do not wish to, if you could just like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment below, I would really appreciate it. So thanks and have a good day.